Go live. And here we are live. We are actually here with a breaking news special edition of this webcast series that we have been doing called Cultivating Connections During the Time of COVID. This is a special request that we have with us National Grange Legislative Director Burton Eller. Burton, hey, how are you?
Good afternoon.
Burton has been really closely monitoring a situation that I know has been really concerning to a lot of members in different communities, but especially in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and areas where dairy is already struggling so much. A couple of weeks ago, we saw runs on the shelves of milk. People couldn't seem to get enough of it. And today we're hearing a lot of reports, or this week we've been hearing a lot of reports about folks being told that they have to dump their milk instead of sending it off to processing plants. And so we have had dozens of emails and calls and questions about why this situation is occurring. And so we thought we would get the expert here, or at least our expert here, to tell us why this is happening, put this in context for us, and then maybe a little bit about if there's anything we can do, or if this is a market issue that we're going to have to let play out. So Burton, I'm going to turn this over to you. And as always, if you have questions or comments as we're going through this live stream, please feel free to put them on the side and we will acknowledge them as soon as we can.
Okay, absolutely. Good to be with you this afternoon. Part of the empty shelves problem was not supply, but demand. It was the same reason that fresh meat and chicken flew off of the counters for 2 weeks. Toilet tissue in most of the country has yet to return to the shelves. People were hoarding fresh stuff and taking it home, and then I think they found they didn't have room to store it all, and some of it probably couldn't be frozen. The pipeline for liquid milk, fluid milk, is full and has been full, and we just had that disruption where everybody was buying milk. The processors filled up a little extra during that time frame, and for the last week or so, and now the fluid milk pipeline is completely full, and there's extra milk in many parts of the country. The stimulus package, or the relief package, basically more than a stimulus package, did contain some language that would allow, in areas where it was in such excess in the fluid milk sector, to dump some milk, be paid for it. But unfortunately, right now, we're not quite sure how or when. That's going to have to be determined. That was one of the problems I found out this week as we were chasing this problem. I do feel like the producer will be paid the price, the market price, the farm gate price, but I'm not sure what he would have to show for that with Farm Service Agency, and I'm not sure how long it will take, which is going to be most of the issues in agriculture with any of the relief funding. I've been on this week with the Undersecretary of Agriculture in charge of the full marketing arena for milk. The lady who runs the Ag Marketing Service Milk Division over at USDA. We've been in touch with people at the National Milk Producers and at the International Dairy Foods Association. And it's a struggle in the short run, and hopefully we can solve it in the long run. Part of the problem is that so much of this milk that is being dumped now went into institutional and restaurant trade. Overnight, it's hard to redirect that to the retail trade. If you were producing something for a restaurant, some specialty product for a restaurant chain or several restaurants, or an institutional feeding company, it's hard to change that product overnight. Many companies can't do that. Maybe they say they're at capacity in what they're doing. What USDA has asked the two sets of processors, the fluid milk processors at National Milk, and the end product with ice cream or cheese or yogurt or other specialty products at the International Dairy Foods, is to jump on this. How fast can we change our product to fit the USDA buying specs? USDA has money. They've got money in the CCC. They got an additional $14 billion in the relief package in the CCC, that's Commodity Credit Corporation, to buy excess product directly from the farm and ranch in a dire market situation. That is available. Years ago, when I was at the department, we had caves in Kansas City full of cheese that we stored from buy programs like this. We have plenty of capacity at the government level to store if we have to, but more than ever now in this crisis, we can distribute to feeding programs like school lunch, women and infant children, other feeding programs, donate to food banks. We were donating powdered milk to food banks when I was at USDA. We had to get rid of it. It was old. It was getting ready to not be any good for human consumption. So what I'm saying is we have tons of room for excess milk. USDA has the money to buy excess milk. The problem is getting the product that fits the specs for them to buy. Right now, I don't think there's enough time in the process to change the big regulatory machine to say, okay, USDA, change your specs. What we have to do is change the processing and manufacture to fit their specs. For instance, most butter manufacturers for the retail and restaurant trade put it in 1 pound blocks and cut it. I'm sorry, in a pound block that's cut into 4 quarters. We all buy at retail and have the stick of butter comes in a restaurant. USDA specs say they want that pound of butter uncut. It's just a big pound of untouched butter. So we have to be able to figure out if okay, can some of the processors change from cutting into a block of 4 and wrapping it into just a single block and wrapping it as a matter of fact. So I'm hopefully by the first of the week, we'll have some update on this. USDA has asked Dairy Farmers of America, DFA, to number one, see if they can do it to any extent, volume wise, and how long it would take them to convert from what they're doing a lot in fluid milk over into the product. And I know that they're working on that. I don't have an answer right now. The thing that I believe that we should, as a grassroots Granger, grassroots dairyman should do is, first of all, you probably already cursed out your co-op. Second of all, call them back up and say, how are we getting along finding a processor to take this milk? I left the CEO over at the National Milk Producers, Jim Mulhern, has a world of experience in public relations and imaging in business. And I commiserated with Jim that dumping milk in a crisis situation is one of the worst image problems that the dairy industry could have when there's people out there that need food, they need help, and we're dumping milk. Now, and the Secretary Perdue understands that. He says, help me, help me try to figure out how we move this product over to this other product and get it moving. We'll buy. The commitment is to buy. We have to see how fast we can convert into product that they can buy. So my plea to the dairyman and to the Granger is, ask your co-op what they're doing, number one, how fast it can be done, and is there anything we can do to help in that conversion of product from the food service and restaurant trade to a spec that the federal government can buy.
Burton, I don't remember a time where we got, or at least where I had gotten, I'm sure your department may have, this many calls this quickly about something in agriculture from our members that were, so incensed that we are in time of crisis, as you mentioned, and we are seeing this valuable product go down the drain, and people's livelihood, people's work. Why do you think that this issue touches people, or is it just because we're all home watching the news?
Well, first of all, we're talking about making people, we'll never make them whole from this economic crisis we're into and going to suffer for a long time. The first thing the dairy farmer who is in a cash flow crunch out there wants to know is, where's the money coming to pay the feed bill and all my other farm bills over the next 30 days? If I'm dumping milk, how am I going to get paid? Number two, again, this is a nutritious, valuable commodity. And the very idea that we as Americans are dumping it down, even most farms don't have hogs anymore that they can feed it to. So we're basically dumping milk is not good. That's not the image we want as caring Americans.
And I think that a lot of people don't understand about, they see gallons and gallons and gallons of milk going, and they hear the word hundredweight and think it might just be good to talk about how dairymen are paid?
Dairymen are paid on 100 pounds of milk, fluid milk that leaves the farm. They get paid per 100 pounds. And at some times of the year, you can cash flow when it's $20 a hundred. We're getting into the flush period in spring and summer. Sometimes it's hard to cash flow when it's $13 a hundred. So the dairy farmer has cash flow because he gets paid more often than most other producers monthly or bi-weekly, however the co-op might set it up. But it may not be enough to cover its expenses. So, it's the dairy industry is in a crunch position right now between income and outgo.
So 100 pounds of milk is roughly about 11 and a half or so gallons. Is that about right?
I'd have to do the calculation, 8 pounds per gallon. So yeah, approximately.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, when we're talking, what a cow can produce and what the producers are putting down the drain. I mean, when you're saying that they've been asked to dump, 47,000 gallons or 40,000.
Think of a big tanker truck coming in, like you see on the highway with gasoline or fuel oil, Sterling steel tanker truck, aluminum, been cleaned up, shiny and disinfected, comes into the farm, and maybe there's 3 or 4 farms that big tanker truck fills up. That's what you're dumping in those 3 or 4 farms. That's what that tanker truck's dumping.
So
that gives you perspective. I mean, we're dumping tanker truckloads of milk.
That does give you a lot of perspective. So we don't have any questions right now, which means I'm going to give us a few minutes of banter here just to make sure nobody's trying to type something in furiously and we're going a little too fast for them. But in the meantime, I assume that you're going to be watching this unfolding issue and maybe getting back to Grangers either through this type of channel or some of our more normal channels to let them know what's going on. So do you mind telling us a little bit about the View from the Hill newsletter that you do on a monthly basis so that people who aren't signed up get themselves signed up, who are listening to this, and why it's important to have those emails of those local members for your purposes?
Surely, we do a monthly update on the issues, whether on the Hill or what basically the food, ag, and rural and healthcare and broadband issues of the National Grange. We do an update once a month. We cover what's going on the Hill at the departments of government. And what we have to have is the email of the Grange member, and you'll get it right in your email box every month. What we're finding is that we don't have all the emails for all the members who would like to know what's going on. So we'd love to have your email. And then we have 3 other newsletters weekly that are put out by other staff members and coordinated by Amanda at Communications. But if there's something burning, we can get it out that way. We don't have to wait for the monthly newsletter. We can do a little piece in the weekly newsletter. But probably now that we are all basically on instant communication with electronics, we could do updates this way next week. I hope to get some good news the first of the week. I hope we can see if there has been at least some turnaround in this issue this week. It's not unlike what we're seeing on the news every night with the issues we've had with masks and protective gear and therapeutics that have been pulled out of the mothball vault and tried, and some are working. It takes time to retool, and that's another issue we've been working with last week that's important. I think it's working pretty well, is the food delivery chain. We've heard about the supply channels of the food of the medical side. We haven't heard much about the supply chain of the food side. The Grange and all of agriculture and food processing industry have been working to make sure those the channels for food delivery stay open. You can have a whole warehouse full of food, but if it doesn't get down to the consumer, you haven't won anything. We did get the Department of Transportation to waive the hours of service 10 days ago for truckers. So if they have to drive all night, instead of quitting at just exactly the right time and taking a rest, if he wants to drive all night, we consider that an emergency to get that food out to the consumer. And that's and the same way with hauling product to the processor from the farm. That's a priority service. And exempt, if let's say the state patrol wants to know what somebody's doing out there in a big truck, agriculture is exempt. We have passage. We are also looking at the supplies to the farm. It's planting season. It's time to get in the ground, and critical industries like fertilizer and pesticide, et cetera, are also exempt. We do have to take a hat off to Secretary Perdue, who understands what's that chain, because he's been involved in several aspects of it, and he's been a champion, sort of opening the doors for us at other like Department of Labor, Department of Transportation, and others. We've also been able to clear the way for H-2A workers partially. The workers that have been here before with a good record do not even have to go through the interview process to cross the border. Mexico has agreed to conduct the remaining interviews and get them here as quickly as possible. We're realists and also realize that we may not get as many as we need, but it's a lot. That picture is a lot brighter than it was just a week ago.
One of the things that we've been doing on this is we always end up reflecting with somebody, and you just said something that I think I want to just reflect on before we sign off, and that is, Americans have not wanted to do the hard and physical labor in the farms and the fields for so long. But we realize that we're rallying together in new ways in crisis. I mean, I don't think half the people that are sewing masks right now under the age of 50 owned a sewing machine 2 weeks ago. It's amazing what people will do to make sure that we have a life that we are happy living as a society. Do you think we see some people who went out of work that would normally in any other given situation not consider farm labor, consider going to make sure that we have food on the shelves this year if we don't have the labor that we normally get from Central America, South America, and from Mexico?
That could certainly be a possibility. And personally, I would love that opportunity if I were in that shape. I hope that we roll out the recovery plan, the recovery money, so that workers that are applying for workman's comp or whatever their state, whatever the system their state has, I hope that's not above the current wage. As long as they're not going to get reimbursed fully for what they're doing, and that may take a while, I can't imagine folks not wanting to go to work. Now, some folks, as you know, won't work at what's the old TV program, Dirty Jobs. There's some people who wouldn't do those jobs for any price, but hopefully there'll be plenty of others who can step forward, because in the areas of the country where we have early harvests, like of strawberries and blueberries and blackberries and some of the other vine crops, early apples by mid-May, June, that's not particularly dirty work, and I would hope that folks would step up. We need them.
I think, especially young folks who are looking at where to go from here, who are physically able, it would be really interesting to see if there's a sense of nation or community before self that continues on and has ag as a possibility, as that labor. And if that happens, I think there's also a place for Grange to advocate for some type of incentives for those people to get to that hard labor, and kind of get us back to our roots in some ways, whether it be temporary forbearance or forgiveness on student loans for a few months while they're working, so that it's, not doubling their wage, but it in effect would be, or something like that. I think there's a lot of ways that Grangers can be helping. And we don't often get a time like this where everybody wants to call their senator and their congressman. They will make time to do it. And so I'm hoping that we continue to have this engaged community who really wants to be those advocates. And I thank you for making sure that they're always updated.
Well, I hope to have better news the first of the week. We'll see. I hope so.
Well, I will tell you that the one question or comment that we have, Steve Coy said it's a great broadcast and hundreds should be watching. And I hope that that's the case, that all of you here who are watching this now will take this and click that little share button and put something up on your personal Facebook and encourage people to watch, as we talked a little bit about why milk is going down the drains here for dairymen, even in the middle of our national crisis. And so, Burton, thank you for joining us. Hopefully we hear from you again early next week, one way or the other, of what's going on, and you can update us on the rest of the workings in Washington.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thanks, guys. Be safe. Join us back here at 3:15. Joe Stefanoni and I are going to be talking about getting ready for potential new members after the COVID crisis allows us to meet again, and what those members may be looking for. We'll see you soon. Wash your hands.